I'm David Feldman, I'm the director of the Birkbeck Institute for the Study of Antisemitism. And I want to begin by start by thanking you for coming today to this seminar in our series, Antisemitism Now. And I'd also like to begin by acknowledging that these are difficult days for many of us as we learn about the slaughter of civilians in Israel and in Gaza. These are times of great consequence for our understanding of anti-Semitism, which is, of course, the remit of BISA. One element of these days is the ways in which brutal attacks on Jewish people in the present have been comprehended and written about through the history and memory of past assaults, especially of pogroms and the Holocaust. And it is the centrality of Holocaust memory, not only to Jewish political culture, but to political culture more broadly in Europe and beyond, that I think creates a bridge between the war going on in Gaza and what precipitated it, and the subject of today's seminar. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome and introduce our hugely distinguished speaker today, Andrea Pető. Andrea is a historian and a professor in the Department of Gender Studies at the Central European University, and now in Austria, previously in Budapest before it was kicked out by the government there. She's a professor at the Department of, she's also a research affiliate of the CEU Democracy Institute in Budapest and a Doctor of Science of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. Her work on gender politics, the Holocaust and war has been translated into 23 languages. Her recent publications include The Forgotten Massacre, Budapest 1944, published in 2021, The Women of the Arrow Cross Party, Invisible Hungarian Perpetrators in the Second World War, which was published in 2020. She was awarded the 2018 All-European Academy's Madame de Staël Prize for Cultural Values and the 2022 University of Oslo Human Rights Award. It truly is an honor and a pleasure to introduce you, Andrea, and it will be to hear your presentation on how illiberal memory politics is hijacking the discourse on anti-Semitism. It's all yours, Andrea.
Thank you very much, David, for the generous introduction, and I'm extremely grateful to be here. And let me join David saying that these are really difficult times, and thank you very much for joining in those times to listen to a talk which I think is really relevant for today's discussion. So without further ado, let me start the presentation. And so first, I would like to thank you for supporting CEU at a certain point, because some of you might have signed letters and supported us, but still we had to move from one European Union member country to another one. And this is unprecedented. And we also lost and we were betrayed. I think that needs to be underlined. And together with this events and calamities, there was also an anti-Semitic campaign happening in Hungary, which was targeting the founder of our university, George Soros. And so what I would like to do today is to solve an enigma. And the enigma, here are the questions for the enigma. So why Hungary has become a laboratory for illiberal politics? What is this illiberal memory politics? This is the term I coined. What does illiberal memory politics, how does illiberal memory politics use the discourses of anti-Semitism? And since I'm a gender studies scholar, I'm really interested if this comparison with the term gender helps us. And you see that gender here is in quotation marks. So this is gender not in the sense of how you might think what gender is, but how illiberal politics is using gender as a symbolic glue, creating hate for mobilizing certain groups of people. And at the end, I would like to suggest some strategies, what can be done in those difficult times. So what is the problem? The problem is that the more discussion is happening, the more public discussion and more debates, the liberal forces are hijacking, discrediting, delegitimizing, emptying the already existing discourses, and they construct an alternative discourse. And that's what I would like to discuss here, and with certain examples. So some memorials, the Hungarian Holocaust Memorial Year, museums, and also how inventing some heroes of the past and educational programs are actually pointing towards, and that's my argument, towards a paradigm change in illiberal context. So that's and of course, this is the definition of the two, how I'm from the huge literature about anti-Semitism. Here are the two definitions, one from Natan Sharansky from 2004, and the other one is from Gidley, McGeever, and Feldman, looking at anti-Semitism as a reservoir of narratives and stereotypes. So that's my starting point as far as the anti-Semitism is concerned. So examples. I'm giving you examples, then I will tell you what can you learn and what I learned from the examples, and I'm very curious for the questions from you that, what did you learn from that? And then I offer a new theoretical insight, and then I will go for the conclusions and what can be done, the big question, what can be done? So the first example is this poster. I'm sure that Hannah Senes doesn't need any introduction. Still, those who don't know her, she was a Hungarian born Jewish poet and freedom fighter who actually left Hungary in 1937, worked in a kibbutz, and then was recruited for the British intelligence, and then parachuted to former Yugoslavia, and then she was betrayed and executed by the Hungarians. And this was a plan to set up this kind of poster of her in the 9th district of Budapest. And if I haven't have written that this is Hannah Senes, I'm sure that none of you would have recognized this baby photo. And I would like to go back to this point, that why the baby photo is used when memorializing somebody who is a serious thinker and a poet. The 100th anniversary, the main event in Hungary for Hannah Senes, was organized in the former secondary school, and you see those who are commemorating this, and that's of course all male panel and all elderly white men remembering her. And here is the cartoon, which was financed by one of the Jewish organizations, where the perpetrators turned to be non-specific. So as you see, you don't need the translation for the very simple text, but it's somehow hidden that actually the perpetrators were the Hungarians, not the Germans. Also, the Hungarian Holocaust Memorial Year 2014, you see the two types of parallel commemorative events. One, which is the Houses of the Yellow Star in Budapest, which is copying the example of the Amsterdam Jewish Museum, when they try to mark those houses which belong to the Jewish inhabitants of Amsterdam. And here is the other one, which is the state-sponsored, very neatly created website. Also, this kind of parallel structures, you see the Holocaust Documentation Center and also the House of Faith, which included lots of public money, but still closed. and also setting up certain Holocaust simulacrum museums where you see this kind of kitsch, like the application of Einstein, and also being not very specific what the heck this museum is doing in here. And the Holocaust is referred as an evilish plan, not being particularly specific. They are inventing new heroes like the Ferenc Koszorús, as allegedly labeled as the savior of the Jews, and has got a memorial, which of course very questionable, and several historians are questioning this. And they are also starting new Jewish studies programs, and that also raises the question of international and transnational cooperation, because the public accredited Jewish studies programs are not getting any public funding, while this kind of very shady Ashkenazium is paying like 15,000 euro per 3-week courses. So it's and they are able to buy very distinguished colleagues who will voluntarily or not voluntarily entering into this space. And of course, the most well advertised example, which is the monument in the center of Budapest, which is the monument of the German occupation, which was parachuted literally into the center of the city during night. And you see the German imperial eagle crushing the innocent Hungarians, which of course represented by Archangel Gabriel, somehow eliminating the fact that, of course, the Hungarian state was collaborating with the murdering of more than 500,000 of its citizens. And here you see the counter memorial, which is, of course, not in the same league, I would say, as far as the material or the endurance are concerned, but definitely an important intervention into the illiberal politics as a form of protest. And that's why I would be talking at the end of the talk about possible resistance strategies, because there is always something you can do. So what is wrong with this example? So why did I pick these examples? First of all, the infantilization of a strong woman. So, I mean, Hannah Szenes was a very strong, determined person, and using her kind of chubby baby photo for commemorialization is rather dubious. They are aestheticizing the different aspects of the Shoah, creating parallel institutions which are competing for funding, displacing the memory. So this kind of chubby baby photo of Hannah Szenes has got nothing to do with the 9th district. There is no consultation happening with the stakeholders. There is an all-male panel, the remasculinization of the public spaces, ignoring the community of remembrance. Certain Jewish communities are selected and picked up for partners of the illiberal government, ignoring most of the Jewish communities and negotiating with selected Jewish communities, parachuting not only monuments but experts, and also to cover up and window dressing the real problems, that they are actually using the commemorialization as a kind of money laundering for certain institutions, and more importantly, omitting the collaboration, local collaboration and local perpetrators, understanding anti-Semitism as exported to Europe in 2015. And that is actually ignoring the local anti-Semitism, the different, that Hungary was the place where the first political anti-Semitic law was passed in 2020. This is basically all mixed together. So the policies of illiberal hijacking. So they are setting up parallel institutions, research institutes and museums. And if you have followed what happened in Poland till recently, you also see this tendency happening. there is the populist turn in topics, research topics, mostly focusing on the ordinary citizens, with the kind of focus on those who had been omitted from the so-called elitist liberal discourse. Also, there is the her story turn, that more and more women are presented in this framework of the so-called patriarchal bargain. So those who are accepting the patriarchal structures, and they are not questioning it. And also the museums are becoming rather simulacrums when they are presenting kind of theme park and experiences instead of facts or ideas. They are appointing experts instead of training them, and they are hijacking the academic quality assurance system. This is the big framework, and buying higher educational institutions and transforming them as entry points. As we know, in Bremen, in Germany, one of the shady Russian oligarchs bought a university, and in Vienna, the liberal Hungarian government bought a university, which will be used as an outreach point for other European countries. And they pick and choose concepts and empty them. So, answering to the first question, how Hungary became a laboratory of illiberal politics, especially because this is the home of the third largest Jewish community in Europe, that they are selecting and reinventing certain Jewish communities. And of course, the concept of double victimhood, namely that Hungary was a victim of both the German occupation and the Soviet occupation, offered and opened up a space for omitting, forgetting, silencing the responsibility of Hungarians in what happened. And I'm actually arguing in my work, and at the end of the talk, you will have a list of open access sources. If you are interested, you can make a screenshot and read what you find interesting or relevant later on. That I'm arguing that this is not nostalgia, but this is a new economy of emotions of the unashamed citizens who are not accepting shame as a regulatory power anymore, and they are very much unashamed to question the existing consensus and value systems. So, and they are not only weakening the system of exploiting the frameworks, but they are also building up their own parallel system and institutionalizing and also building this up. And the game changer is that the liberal governments are pushing public money into this. So, of course, I'm not the first one who recognized this, and there are several previous attempts to understand what the heck is happening in this framework. And there are two previous frameworks in which this kind of instrumentalization or distortion or questioning of the Holocaust paradigm had been discussed. One is the distortion, the other is revisionism, and I'm arguing for the third one. So now we are arriving to the point when I'm actually bringing in a kind of theoretical innovation, I think, to think about these kind of issues in a new, fresh, informed by fresh theoretical insights. So on the first point, you see the definitions of the Holocaust distortion. This is mostly used by the different international organizations like the IHRA or the European Holocaust Remembrance Infrastructure. So the international organizations are using this concept of Holocaust distortion, which I don't find sufficient to understand what is happening. Then there is the other possibility of revisionism. And of course, revisionism is connected with David Irving and the others. But if you read Tucker's typology about revisionism, it actually gives a more nuanced approach to revisionism and gives really an understanding of the different forms of revisionism, this value-driven revisionism, that it can happen that these unashamed citizens had got very different values and they are questioning this kind of values, what we, I'm dare to say, consider dear. And then I'm arguing for a paradigm, understanding this is a paradigm change as an illiberal democracy exploitation. So what is what we see, and how is this can be understood in this new theoretical framework? So they are discrediting, delegitimizing, and defunding the existing institutions, and they build a new one. So it's a parallel system. So that's why the PowerPoint was a kind of dichotomic presentation. It's also a double speech. For international organizations, the illiberal politicians are performing as expected, but for the home audience, they are using a very different discourse. It's very much anti-intellectual. It is a populist turn in memory politics of the unashamed citizens. And of course, historians who are living in these illiberal countries are using self-censorship, especially because there is no quality assurance. They are returning to the religious framework of memory politics and hijacking and emptying this religious framework. And I'm arguing that this is not a distortion, this is not a revisionism, but a paradigm change, how this illiberal polypore state, and I will explain this polypore state, with mnemonic security creates a new truth for unashamed citizens. And this is the process what we are seeing, and this is the framework what we are seeing. And I'm arguing that if we don't recognize the big picture, then we are fighting small little fights, which are all noble, but they're not really helping us to move forward. So, because there are previous explanatory frameworks, the backlash that it will go back to the good old times, I'm actually concerned, but we don't have time here to discuss that there hasn't been any good old times, because there were some serious problems with the previous memorialization structures. Also, that it's a form of authoritarianism, and that's I'm actually arguing for, it's an illiberal takeover. And there are, as you know, political scientists are ready to die for a new typology or a new distinction. So here you see the list of the different terms coined by different colleagues who think that this actually describes what is happening. But I'm actually offering here and now, together with my colleague Weronika Grzebelska, this new conceptual framework of this illiberal polypore state, which is a paradigm change because it's a state which is intervening into this process. And its modus operandi consists of three elements: building up parallel institutions. And I think that in the previous section, I argued and introduced very convincingly the different institutions which had been set up. Familialism, that it speaks about families. I will not talk about this more here, but if you have questions, I'm happy to talk about this. And security and securitization, that everything becomes an issue of security. So here are the three important concepts I will be using in order to explain how this illiberal memory politics is hijacking the memory for its own purpose. The first is this illiberal polypore state, which is securitizes, builds up parallel institutions, and uses familialism, and uses taxpayers' money. It's public money, and it's also European Union taxpayers' money for this particular purpose, to weaken, to empty the existing structures. The other is the localized transnationalism, that all these processes, what I have been presenting to you, have been also present in different other countries and in different other contexts. But what is specific in this Hungarian context is the example of the Matthias Corvinus College, which actually serves as a think tank for this illiberal, what I call illiberal international, which aims to disseminate and transfer all these kind of know-hows and concepts and ideas around the globe. And the third one is illiberal pragmatism. And this is the most difficult one, because we have been trained as academics and intellectuals to die for a concept, right? But the illiberal pragmatism is basically using, appropriating, and just leaving certain concepts if it doesn't fit into their purpose. So, and this is difficult to understand. And it's, of course, certainly fits into this intentionalist discussion. But I would suggest to think about this Holocaust and anti-Semitism used by these illiberal forces as a conscious strategy which they are using in order to maintain the mnemonic security in this particular geopolitical framework. So what are the consequences? First of all, that the religious framework is coming back. So the laic framework of memory politics is basically over, creating this freedom fighter rhetoric that, you know, everything is a question of fight and they are the good ones, the good cause. So the unashamed citizens are fighting for the good cause. The anti-intellectualism, that they are looking at the Holocaust as a painful chapter and closing it and move on. And that's actually something which I would like to stress here, because the whole idea and the whole discourse on anti-Semitism is not connected in their discourse with the Holocaust and what happened, what led to the Holocaust, but this is something which has been imported to Europe. And of course, there is this new experts who are just appointed, and they are just to, again, use this mushroom example, they are mushrooming. And it's a very good business, and for the selected few experts. And it's also a threat to conservatism and the different conservative forces, because this polypore is also eating up what has been in the center of the conservative discourse. It means remasculinization and also self-censorship. And the self-censorship is also has an impact on international collaborations, because maybe most of the listeners are from the UK, and since UK is not a part of the European funding schemes, there is this very strange alliance building up between the UK universities and the Hungarian universities, the two pariahs of the system, because some of the Hungarian universities, most of the Hungarian universities had been excluded from the European funding system. So this will be really interesting how this transfer is actually happening on the academic level. So let me go to the question, what are the similarities with the anti-gender movement? So I was en passant, I was mentioning the concept of gender as symbolic glue. So when all these anti-gender hateful discussions are happening, so from 2015 onwards, the different gender studies professionals and the gender studies program had been attacked in Hungary, but also in the other countries. So that's also the sign that the liberal forces are also attacking the academic freedom, and also they are applying the illiberal pragmatism. And basically, I'm arguing to use this symbolic glue that we are arguing that gender is a symbolic glue. It is not a concept. It's a reservoir where certain political forces are putting certain contents in it depending on their political interest and their political will, and they are using it for creating hate, and they are not using any kind of policy measures in this socializational fight, but kind of mobilizing different political groups and gluing them together for certain purposes to redefine what normal is and what the new world should look like. They are hijacking the existing infrastructure, and it's mostly a definitional debate. What is gender? What is anti-Semitism? Who is anti-Semite? And it is also connected to institutionalization of these parallel systems which had been built up, especially the think tankization of knowledge production, that there are lots of different think tanks built up in the illiberal states financed by public money. And it is hiding the real problems, giving wrong answers to the really serious existing questions. So what can we do? What are the possibilities of action when you are living in an illiberal state? And I'm very much inspired by David J. McCoy Mason, how he built up a network of resistance fighters in the apartheid South Africa, and during apartheid, and train the future generation of activist experts during very difficult circumstances. And here is a list, which is a very ad hoc list, which I think is useful, not always to implement, but recognize that it's there, because of course everybody has got very different emotional economy and circumstances to resist. So the first is strengthening your guild and professional ties. The other one is looking academic authorization to impress and achieve aims, and engage in debates, but not for and against, but rather issues to be solved. So I'm very often on media, but I never accept any kind of invitation when there are for and against, always to multiple positionalities, because then you are pushed into a corner and it's really difficult to address complex issues. You might have recognized that I'm using a very accessible language, so I'm trying to avoid the technical language. It's very much a legal fight. It's a legal counter-revolution, what is happening here. So the legal frames are extremely important, and aligning with lawyers, lining up with influencers. So I have no problem posing with influencers on my Instagram account, and also using the existing organizations and their resources for our own purpose, using existing laws and to threat with PR disasters if somebody is not complying, and also recognizing that the politics of consensus is over. So this is the conflict is good, and actually the conflict is the only option. So debating, reporting are all totally normal in these new times, and maybe to limit the number of statements and open letters one signs. So I mean, I try to be very present in the public sphere, but I'm very selective what I'm actually signing. And of course, that also means that you might be listed as a traitor, so be ready for that, because doing academia and critical work is also a life-threatening enterprise in illiberal states. And be present in social media, but make yourself safe, because that's the social media is too important to be left for the unashamed illiberal citizens. So that's also should be used as a space. So here are the different readings, if I was unclear, or if you want to read more about the revisionists, what is the differentiation between the revisionism and this paradigm change I'm actually arguing, or what is this illiberal memory politics in more details, or how the actually instrumentalizing the Holocaust memory is happening. And also I just published a big article about the invisible Aniko Senes in the Nashim. So that was it, and I'm really honored to be here, and I'm looking forward to the questions.